8 years, I said, my voice steadier than I expected given that my hands were shaking inside my pockets. 8 years I ran this hotel. Every contract, every crisis, every impossible request at 2 in the morning. And you're telling me Kira is taking over operations? Bryce leaned back in his chair with the particular ease of someone who has never been told no by anyone who mattered. He was 31 years old and wearing a linen blazer in December, which should have told me everything I needed to know. His girlfriend sat to his right clutching a rose gold water bottle with a good vibes only sticker peeling off the side, her eyes moving around the room like she was planning a redecoration. We need fresh energy, Bryce said. Kira has incredible instincts for the guest experience space. Kira has 42,000 Instagram followers, I said. That's not a hospitality credential. Paula from HR cleared her throat softly in the corner. Bryce's expression tightened. We're moving in a new direction, Darcy. Today is your last day. Paula has your severance details. 4 weeks plus your accrued PTO. I looked at him for a moment. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and set my master keycard down on the conference table between us. It landed with a quiet final click. The Meridian Group begins their Winter Leadership Summit tomorrow morning, I said. 180 executives, 6 weeks of coordination, your father's single most valuable corporate client. Every room assignment, every dietary restriction, every airport transfer window, everything they need, is on my personal laptop, which I'm taking with me. And their event coordinator's contact information exists in exactly one place, my personal phone. Kira looked up from her water bottle for the first time. Bryce opened his mouth. Enjoy the holidays, I said, and I walked out. My name is Darcy Voss, and this is the story of how I watched an 80-room, 4-diamond hotel collapse without doing a single thing wrong. I just stopped holding it up. But you need to understand what 8 years looks like when you give them completely to something that isn't yours. Before you can understand why walking away was enough. I was 24 when I came to the Aldridge Grand, 1 year out of the College of Charleston, with a hospitality degree, and 1 year of front desk experience at an airport-adjacent property that had taught me, mostly what I didn't want to spend my career doing. I drove to my interview in a car, with a check engine light, that had been on for 3 months, and walked into Frank Aldridge's office, with a resume I was half embarrassed to hand over. Frank was 62 years old. He had bought a failing motor inn on the edge of Charleston's historic district 30 years earlier on an SBA loan, and a level of confidence in himself that, by all accounts, was not entirely warranted at the time. He had turned it into one of the finest boutique hotels in the Southeast, 80 rooms. A AAA 4-diamond rating he was fiercely protective of, a reputation built entirely on the kind of service that made guests feel thought of, specifically, personally, not generically. He looked at my resume for about 15 seconds. Then he said, "Tell me about a time everything went wrong and you fixed it." I told him about a wedding rehearsal dinner at the hotel where I'd worked before, where the private event room flooded at 7 p.m. The couple was frantic. 65 guests had nowhere to go. My manager was unreachable. I spent the next 4 hours redirecting guests to the lobby bar, negotiating last-minute space from the restaurant across the street, processing a partial refund I was not authorized to give, and sending handwritten apology notes to every guest the following morning. The couple gave us a 5-star review. I gave myself 1 sleepless night and a conviction that I was genuinely good at this. Frank had smiled. "You're hired," he said. "You'll start as assistant front desk manager. I don't expect that to last long." He was right about that. By the time I was 28, I was general manager of the Aldridge Grand. The youngest the hotel had ever had. Frank liked to mention, though he said it the way people say things they're proud of, but too reserved to fully claim. I was also by then the person Frank called first about everything. Leaking roof, difficult guest, staffing crisis, vendor dispute. He called me. I loved that hotel in a way I couldn't fully explain to anyone outside of it. I knew every quirk of every room, which 3rd-floor room got cold from the east window in January, which elevator ran 5 seconds slower than the others, which guests needed to be greeted by name at the door, versus the ones who preferred not to be fussed over. I had a mental file on hundreds of repeat guests built over years of paying attention. The corporate attorney from Atlanta, who always needed extra blankets and a split of Sauvignon Blanc, waiting at arrival. The couple from Charlotte, who came every anniversary and still teared up a little when they found fresh flowers in their room, even after the 5th year running. The conference director with a sesame allergy she had mentioned once, in passing, 18 months ago, and that I had flagged in her guest profile and cross-referenced to kitchen notes for every stay since. If you believe that expertise is something that should be valued, that the people who quietly keep things running deserve more than a 4-week check, hit that subscribe button before we go any further. It's free. It helps us reach the people who need to hear this, and I promise you, the next part of this story is worth staying for. The crown of everything I had built over those 8 years was the relationship with Meridian Group. Meridian was a national management consulting firm headquartered in Charlotte, and they had been booking the Aldridge Grand 4 times a year for executive retreats for the past 6 years. The relationship had started from a referral and a first retreat that came within hours of being a complete disaster. Last-minute speaker cancellation, AV failure on the morning of opening remarks, a coastal storm that wasn't in any forecast. I had solved each problem before Christine Ferris, Meridian's event coordinator, had finished her first cup of coffee. She called me afterward. "I'm coming back," she said, "because of you specifically." That was the beginning of $220,000 a year in guaranteed bookings. Christine didn't deal with the front desk or the food and beverage manager or anyone else on staff. She dealt with me, because I was the only person in that building she trusted to ensure that 180 of her firm's most senior partners had a flawless experience from the moment their first flight touched, down to the moment their last car left for the airport. Every detail of every Meridian retreat lived in documents on my personal laptop and in relationships stored in my personal phone. The direct line to the private car service I had been using for 4 years, account in my name. The specialty flower farm in Adams Run that did our custom welcome arrangements. My contact, my standing order. The craft bakery in North Charleston that made the personalized welcome boxes. They responded to my cell. Christine Ferris's direct number. Mine. I had meant for years to create a shared handoff protocol. To train a backup. To transfer the relationship gradually to someone else who could carry it forward. I had asked Frank for a dedicated second-in-command 3 times in 3 years. Each time he had said next quarter, and the quarter had arrived with something more urgent, and the conversation had reset. I had been the system for so long that nobody remembered the system was a person. Frank had a heart attack in September. He was standing in the lobby, speaking with a guest when it happened. He was transferred to a cardiac care facility outside Savannah within 24 hours, and told in unambiguous terms to remove himself entirely from daily operations for at least 6 months. His son Bryce arrived the following Monday. I had met Bryce a handful of times over the years. He was 31, permanently tan, and had spent the better part of 4 years moving between Tulum, Bali, and various cities in southern Europe in a loosely defined pursuit of what he described, when someone asked, as building something meaningful. Based on his Instagram, which I did look at once, the most meaningful thing he appeared to be building was a personal brand. He had views on authentic storytelling and elevated experiences that he expressed frequently and with great confidence. He arrived at the hotel at 9:45 on a Monday morning, which in our world is the equivalent of arriving at noon, wearing a blazer that cost more than my monthly rent. Kira was with him. Kira had a lifestyle account with 42,000 followers and a highlight reel about intentional living that featured a lot of boutique hotel lobbies, smoothie bowls, and caption-length reflections on energy. Her last documented professional role had been 18 months as a wellness consultant for a boutique fitness studio that had since permanently closed. Bryce announced in his first staff meeting that Kira would be serving as Director of Guest Experience, effective immediately. She appeared in my office the following week, carrying her water bottle and a genuine desire to understand operations that was unfortunately unaccompanied by any prior knowledge of it. "Why do we keep physical preference cards?" she asked one afternoon, holding up the small stack from my desk the way you might hold something you found in an attic. "Couldn't we just ask guests how they're feeling at check-in? Create a more organic arrival moment?" I thought about Christine's managing partner with the tree nut allergy, currently scheduled to arrive in 11 days. The cards flag medical allergies and mobility requirements, I said. Among other things. She tilted her head. That feels very liability-driven. That's because it is. Bryce let Lou go in early November. Lou had been our head concierge for 11 years. He was 54, a former hospitality instructor from the College of Charleston, and the kind of person who knew every carriage driver and restaurant owner, and genuinely useful human being, within a 30-mile radius of the hotel by first name. He was also the person who maintained the vendor relationships I relied on for every Meridian retreat, a specialty flower farm, a craft bakery for personalized welcome boxes, a private sommelier who ran our wine pairing dinners. When I told Bryce that Lou leaving meant losing those vendor relationships, he said he was confident we could find alternatives. He said Lou had been resistant to the vision. I sent a detailed memo outlining the specific financial risk. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. 3 weeks later, Bryce eliminated the overnight desk position. The Aldridge Grand had staffed a front desk from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. since the hotel opened, not primarily for check-ins, for guests who needed a person, who were sick, who were locked out, who had a crisis at 2 in the morning, and needed a warm, knowledgeable human voice, instead of a chat function that asked them to describe their issue in under 200 words. "We have the app," Bryce said when I raised it. "The app doesn't call 911, I said. "You're overthinking this." In the 3 weeks following the elimination of overnight coverage, we received 6 one-star reviews citing unresponsive service. In 8 years as general manager, I had never received a one-star review for responsiveness. Not one. I documented everything. Every decision, every warning I delivered, and every response it received. I kept the file on my personal drive and told myself it was evidence I was building for Frank. Underneath that, I think I knew what it really was. The calendar invitation appeared on a Wednesday morning. Quick check-in, 3 p.m. Bryce, Kira, HR. No agenda, no additional context. Just that corporate phrasing that lands in your stomach before your brain has a chance to process it. I sat at my desk for a long moment after I saw it. Then I opened the Meridian Retreat planning document on my personal laptop. The Winter Summit, 180 executives, arriving the following morning, and spent 90 minutes making sure every detail was current, complete, and saved nowhere but my own drive. Room, assignments, dietary restrictions. The 40-minute airport transfer windows blocked with the car service. The private dinner reservation I had made 3 weeks ago through my personal contact at the restaurant. Christine Ferris's direct cell number. I was not sabotaging anything. I was simply acknowledging, clearly and without apology, that these things were mine. 4 weeks, Bryce said, in the conference room at 3 o'clock. 4 weeks of severance and accrued PTO in exchange for signing an NDA and clearing out by end of day. 4 weeks, for 8 years of showing up before anyone else, and leaving after everyone was gone, and solving the problems that would have made the evening news, if I hadn't caught them first. I set the master key card on the table. I told him about the Meridian Group. And I left. That night I went to a real restaurant. White tablecloths, a wine list with actual depth, a server who refilled my water without being asked. I ordered shrimp and grits and a glass of Chardonnay and ate the whole thing slowly, at a table by myself, in no hurry, for the first time in longer than I could clearly remember. I left my phone face up beside my water glass and watched it. Christine Ferris called me at 8:17 the next morning. "Darcy," she said, "I just spoke with someone named Kira at the front desk. She's apparently the new director of guest experience." A pause. She did not know what a room block was. I told Christine the truth. That I had been let go the previous afternoon. That the complete planning document for the Winter Summit was on my personal laptop, and I could email it to her in the next 10 minutes. That I would call the private car service directly to release the account information to her, so that her airport transfers would run on schedule. I did all of those things. Then I sat by my window and waited. Christine called back 40 minutes later. She told me she was redirecting the group to the Belmont. They had a block available. She appreciated my help, she said, and she was genuinely sorry about what had happened, and she would not be returning to the Aldridge Grand. My phone rang 6 minutes after that, Bryce. I let it go to voicemail. Then Kira, voicemail. Then the hotel's main line twice. I let them ring, all of them. That evening, a Savannah area code came through, and I picked it up on the second ring. Darcy. Frank's voice was slower than I remembered, the effort in it audible and new. He had been at his sister's house in Savannah since leaving the cardiac rehab center, against his cardiologist's recommendation that he avoid stress, which under the circumstances was somewhat beside the point. He didn't apologize for calling at night. He said, "Christine told me what happened. She told me everything, including what you did for the group after you left." I didn't say anything. "I put you in an impossible position," he said. "I left him in charge without any of the context he needed. I didn't staff you properly for 3 years. I should have built a hotel that could survive the loss of any single person, including you." He paused. "That's on me, not on you." "You were sick," I said. "I was making those staffing decisions long before I got sick," he said. "I just used the budget as an excuse." He told me Bryce was out. The board had voted that afternoon. He was bringing in a contract operator to manage the property while he assessed next steps. "I would ask you to come back," he said. "But I don't think that's right." "No," I said, "it isn't." I told him about the vendor contact folder in his office credenza, bottom drawer, labeled in red. Every specialty vendor, every account note, everything I had quietly put together 6 months earlier on a slow Sunday afternoon, not because I had suspected anything. Just because I had always planned for contingencies. "Call Christine yourself," I said. "Her direct line, not through the hotel, she'll respect that." "Thank you," he said. "The real kind, not the professional courtesy kind." The Aldridge Grand lost its 4-diamond rating at the February inspection. Without the Meridian contract and the 3 corporate accounts that followed Christine's lead out the door. Over the next 90 days, the hotel's revenue dropped sharply, enough that Frank's options narrowed to 1. He sold the property in the spring to a regional boutique hotel group that kept the name, kept the staff, and kept the things worth keeping. Bryce, by all accounts I picked up through the hospitality industry's surprisingly tight grapevine, had taken an entry-level position at his uncle's property management company in Columbia. Starting at the front desk, learning the business from the ground up. Kira's account pivoted to navigating professional reinvention. It lasted about 6 weeks before going quiet. Roxanne Park reached out 2 weeks after my last day at the Aldridge Grand, which told me she had been watching the situation for longer than that. She was VP of operations for a 6-property boutique hotel group along the southeast coast, and the role she offered, regional director of operations, with a real team and a real budget and actual authority over how things ran, was everything I had been doing in pieces for 8 years without the resources to do it right. I took it without negotiating, which I later learned Roxanne found slightly disappointing, because she had come prepared to go significantly higher. The first thing I built at the new company was a knowledge transfer system across all 6 properties. Every vendor relationship documented, every VIP guest protocol mapped, every piece of institutional knowledge that lived in any one person's head extracted, written down, and backed up in a shared platform that 5 different team members could access and update. No single person's departure, including mine, was going to bring anything down. I slept through the night somewhere around week 3. Without an alarm, without anything pulling me out of sleep, just quiet. I lay there for a long moment on that first morning, not entirely sure what to do with myself, and then I got up and made coffee and sat by the window and let it be. I met Charlie at a sourcing conference in March. He owned a farm-to-table restaurant in Beaufort and gave a talk about sustainable supplier relationships that was so genuinely interesting. I introduced myself afterward, which was not something I would have done a year earlier, because a year earlier I wouldn't have been at a conference on a weekday. That didn't require me to be somewhere else first. We talked for 2 hours, over terrible conference coffee. He understood what I did, knew the industry well enough to ask the right questions, and when I described the specific satisfaction of solving a problem, before a guest even realized it existed, he didn't look confused or politely interested. He nodded like that was a completely reasonable thing to care about. "Hospitality," he said, "is just the art of making someone feel like you thought of them specifically. Everything else is infrastructure." I called my sister in Portland in April, for no reason other than I wanted to hear her voice. She answered on the second ring, and when I told her I just wanted to catch up, she went so quiet I thought the call had dropped. Are you okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. I actually think I am. We talked for almost 2 hours. Her kids, her garden, her husband's entirely failed attempt at fermenting his own hot sauce. Nothing urgent. Everything I'd been missing. I drove to Savannah in May to see Frank before the sale closed. He was on his sister's porch in the late afternoon, moving slower than I remembered but alert in all the ways that mattered, watching everything, missing nothing. He said he was proud of what I'd built at the Aldridge Grand. I said I wished things had ended differently. We sat with that for a while without trying to resolve it, which felt exactly right. You'll build something better now, he said finally, with people who deserve what you bring to it. I already am, I said. On the day the sale closed, I was in a planning meeting with Roxanne and the full operations team. Working through a guest loyalty initiative, we were rolling out across all 6 properties. Someone had brought pastries from a local bakery. The sun was coming through the conference room windows. People were arguing productively about the rollout sequence, the kind of argument that only happens when everyone in the room actually knows what they're talking about. I thought about the Aldridge Grand, the harbor visible from my old office on clear mornings, the creek in the 3rd-floor hallway. Frank saying I don't expect this to last long with that careful private pride. I thought about the master key card landing on a conference table with a small quiet click. Then someone asked me a question about vendor coordination for the new initiative, and I answered it, and the meeting moved on. That's what I know now, having had enough distance to see it clearly. You can give yourself entirely to something that doesn't have the capacity to hold you back. You can be the foundation for a very long time. But when you finally build something solid enough to stand on yourself, something with actual support underneath it, you stop noticing how long you went without. If this story had you from the moment that keycard landed on the table, hit the like button right now. What was the moment that hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. There are more stories like this one, and this community deserves to hear all of them.